I believe that innovation has to become a bottom-up thing. Innovation has to come from the bottom because that is where the problems exist. So if we want to foster innovation, we have to provide and make it easy for those people to be innovative, to make it easy for people to change. So I talk about this idea of friction. So is it harder to do the things I want, or is it harder to do the opposite? So if I want you to be innovative, is it hard to be innovative, or is it hard to maintain the status quo? At the moment, I'd say in a lot of organisations, we actually make it hard to be innovative rather than making it hard to maintain the status quo. So we've got to put the friction in the right place if we want people to actually change their behaviours.
I think, to me, it just simply means thinking differently, right? Not being limited by the way things currently work, not doing things the way they've always been done, finding new sources of inspiration, looking outside your sector and area, and factoring in different approaches to common problems.
So I think Australians inherently are quite an innovative bunch, and I think that rather than producing things with a bit of wire and trying to sell it to the rest of the world, the ability to produce digital products and digital services take away a lot of the traditional barriers that Australia's had to access to markets and tyranny of distance. So I think Australia is actually very well placed to innovate. The challenge is we still punish people for getting things wrong. In particular, we punish government, or government punishes itself for getting things wrong. Now that's getting better, but the ability to experiment in a safe environment and learn from it and then scale up is what we ultimately need to do. My favourite example is actually the Apollo series. It wasn't Apollo 1 that got to the moon, or Apollo 2, or Apollo 3. It was Apollo 11 that got to the moon. So it's a lot of disciplined experimentation, always increasing in scale of ambition, but strongly supported because of the purpose. We need to allow ourselves in Australia to experiment, to test, try and learn, and to not be afraid of, in a way, not be afraid of actually being bold and believing in ourselves.
I think in the IT sector we used to be the big black box, which was heavy and expensive and really difficult to make those changes because it could have been catastrophic. But nowadays things are much more lean and nimble, and we've got to allow our staff to do it. We don't allow our IT staff to have those failures and those changes and those quick ways of learning. Bringing in more agile and lean concepts now are allowing that, but we've also got to stop finger pointing when things go wrong and use that as first attempt in learning, rather than this is a problem and we've made a mistake and it's going to cost. Sometimes when you're running a big project, if you are $5,000 into it and then work out that it's not going to work, well, that's a better outcome than doing a $1.5 million project.
Yeah, look, so I think it's quite interesting how you approach innovation. Certainly there's a very much a macro level, what is the business doing and how does the business perform? And that kind of gets picked up by obviously the senior management who look at how that works. But at a more localized level, as we put in systems and platforms and you're looking at, say, customer experience, I think the way we're viewing it as we roll out, say, CRM is very much around how do you take sort of continuous improvement cycles. So you put the base in, but then actually how does the business make use of that data and information? Not everything you try works, but how do you then sort of either stop, continue if it is working, or pivot and try something slightly different? So very much the patterns we're trying to put in within IT are around sort of continuous improvement streams, but making sure we've got good foundations initially.
Yeah, it's something I've been thinking a lot about because I have over 2 decades of consulting experience, and what typically happens is that I see or am part of all of these corporate strategy and transformation visions, and what happens is once you look at 100 of those from all over the world, you start realizing that they are all the same, right? We all talk about agility when it comes to operating model. We all want a single customer view. And because we are stuck in those foundations, we are actually not using our imagination, our creativity, and we are really not innovating when it comes to serving our customers and customers' needs, right? So bringing imagination back and creativity back is incredibly important, and being able to support different types of individuals in the organization. You've noticed that because it's easier to go to a board and talk about operational innovation or effectiveness. Why? Because reducing costs, everyone signs the check for a transformation that is cost-focused, but that is only valuable if it's leading to a business that is responding to customer needs and is able to grow. So creativity, imagination, and focusing on the customer. And right now we have tremendous tools to do that. We have more data than ever. Data, data, data. We have AI and analytics that we need to use very cautiously, but it's there. And we have people that aspire to make a difference in businesses, that are ready to be unleashed, and that hate to be stuck in boxes, right? You can't, at the moment with young people, what they want is to add values and experience many different things. How do we make that happen in businesses?
We like to talk about test and learn. So the more that you actually iterate and try and do something over and over again, the more that you'll actually get the thing improving. So innovation, from my perspective, is the word actually really comes from the word innovar, which means to renew. So you're not actually talking about creating something new, you're talking about renewing something. So it's all about iterating on top of it. So from my perspective, creating that environment is, once again, doing things over and over again, and then trying to improve on it and learning from it, but then also being in a situation where you bring a disparate group of people together to actually do it. So we talk about cross-functional teams, but it's all about cross-functional ideas and different people coming together with different ideas to then renew the current situation.
Yeah, so innovation is a word, it's a buzzword, right? It's one of those type of things we throw out as just being a good thing, you know, and we want to transform so we can be innovative is one of the lines you hear quite a bit, as if innovation by itself was going to actually help us out. We want to transform to be innovative to compete is probably the thing, right? So innovation is just being competitive, I think, really, you know, finding new ways to be competitive, scaling things out so they can be competitive, new discoveries, new ways of doing things. But it's not in and of itself an end. It really can't be, because if that is the case, then, you know, it's sort of like people who say we need to be empathetic. Empathy is also a good thing, but it's not an end in of itself, right? So I just think that's really what it comes down to. You need to have an organization that is able to fund and govern projects and products out there so they can actually be done quickly, so that we can learn fast, so we can actually learn from our mistakes, so we can see if we're doing the right thing. Is there even a need for what we're doing? And make these decisions quickly so we don't waste lots of time.
Yeah, it's really hard, to be frank, and I think the bigger you get, the harder it is to do it, because you second guess and look at all your investments. I think there's probably two main ingredients, I would say. The first one is just remembering that innovation's everyone's job. So I think we often assume that we'll get a team and we'll make that the innovation team, we'll put them centrally, but we'll tell everyone else it's their job not to innovate.
The simple answer, if there is such a thing, is you need a common language. People need to understand that there's different types of innovation. Yeah. You need to innovate in the core. That's very important. That's incremental, but doesn't mean it's unimportant. Yeah. Then you need to innovate the customer interface, how we interact with our stakeholders and our customers. Again, hugely important, certain set of challenges. Sometimes you need to innovate the business model. Again, without that common language, people get confused about what are we trying to do and what's important and what's not. And often I find what we do is we simplify it. We try to simplify it and say, look, these folks are working on the core innovation effort, hugely important, but it won't transform the company. And then a small group of people are perhaps working on business model innovation and other efforts. But without that common language, people just can't communicate, and you run into some very predictable problems.